The space station known as Orbital Haven floated silently in the vast darkness of space, its metallic surface glinting faintly under the distant light of the sun. It was a marvel of human engineering, a place where science and entertainment collided. The station served many purposes. It housed laboratories for cutting-edge research, hosted diplomatic meetings with alien species, and even broadcasted popular shows for audiences across the galaxy. On this particular day, however, it would become the stage for an unexpected clash between two larger-than-life personalities. Clint Eastwood moved through the corridors of the station with the same quiet confidence that had defined him throughout his life. Now well into his later years, Clint's weathered face carried the weight of decades spent navigating both Earth's politics and the complexities of interstellar diplomacy. His role as an ambassador wasn't something he had sought out, but his reputation for making tough decisions made him a natural choice when humanity needed someone to negotiate peace with the Zorathians. These aliens were unlike any species humans had encountered before, tall, graceful beings with translucent skin that shimmered like liquid glass under artificial lights. They were advanced, enigmatic, and, according to some, potentially dangerous. Robert De Niro, on the other hand, was not there to negotiate or broker deals. He was there to speak his mind, loud and clear. Once a celebrated actor back on Earth, Robert had transformed himself into a passionate advocate for justice. Over the years, he had taken up the cause of marginalized groups within human colonies scattered across the stars. Whether it was protesting unfair labor practices or demanding equal rights for those living under alien rule, Robert never shied away from a fight. His fiery speeches often drew crowds, and his name carried weight among those who believed humanity should stand firm against oppression, whether from within or without. Neither man had planned to meet here, but fate, or perhaps bad scheduling, had brought them together on the set of The Galactic View, one of the most popular talk shows in the galaxy. Hosted by Rachel Monroe, a sharp-witted journalist known for her ability to ask the hard questions, the show attracted viewers from all corners of human space and even beyond. Today's episode promised to be especially exciting, featuring not only Clint and Robert but also representatives from the Zorathian delegation. As the cameras rolled and the audience buzzed with anticipation, Rachel welcomed her guests onto the brightly lit stage. Clint took his seat first, leaning back slightly as if trying to appear relaxed. His piercing eyes scanned the room, taking in the mix of humans and aliens watching intently. Robert followed, his energy almost electric as he settled into the chair beside Clint. There was no handshake, no exchange of pleasantries, just a brief nod that barely masked the tension simmering beneath the surface. Rachel began the interview by asking about humanity's readiness to coexist with alien civilizations. She turned first to Clint, whose response was measured and deliberate. "We're dealing with a species far more advanced than us," he said, his voice low and steady. "If we want to survive, we need to think carefully about every decision we make. This isn't about emotions, it's about staying alive." Robert shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with Clint's words. When Rachel gave him the floor, he leaned forward, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair. "Survival doesn't mean abandoning our values," he shot back. "If we start compromising who we are just to get along, then what's the point of surviving at all? Empathy and understanding. That's how we build real connections." The contrast between the two men couldn't have been starker. Clint's calm pragmatism clashed sharply with Robert's emotional fervor, and the audience could feel it. Some nodded approvingly at Clint's logic, while others murmured their agreement with Robert's passion. Rachel tried to steer the conversation back to neutral ground, but the debate quickly grew heated. "You can't reason with every problem by waving a flag of morality," Clint said, his tone sharpening. "Sometimes you have to do what's necessary, not what feels good. And sometimes doing what's necessary leads to disaster," Robert countered, his voice rising. "Look at history. Every time we've ignored ethics for convenience, it's come back to bite us." The argument escalated until finally, Clint stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Without another word, he turned and walked off the set, leaving behind stunned silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then the audience erupted into chatter, and the camera crew scrambled to figure out what to do next. Rachel recovered quickly, turning to Robert with a forced smile. "Let's take a short break and come back to discuss this further," she said, though it was clear the damage had already been done. As the cameras cut away, Robert sat rigidly in his chair, his jaw clenched. He hadn't expected things to go this way, but now that they had, he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Word of the incident spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. Within minutes, clips of the argument were being shared across social media platforms, sparking debates among viewers. Some praised Clint for standing his ground, calling him a voice of reason in uncertain times. Others sided with Robert, accusing Clint of being cold-hearted and out of touch. Memes and jokes flooded the internet, turning the confrontation into a spectacle. Backstage, Clint paced angrily, muttering under his breath about hotheads and idealists. He had little patience for people like Robert, whose ideals seemed to him dangerously naive. To Clint, survival was the only thing that mattered, and sentimentality had no place in the harsh realities of space. Still, he couldn't deny that the public fallout might complicate matters with the Zorathians. Their negotiations were delicate enough without added drama. Meanwhile, Robert found himself bombarded with messages from supporters and critics alike. While part of him regretted losing his temper on live television, another part felt vindicated. He truly believed that humanity needed leaders willing to stand up for what was right, even if it meant ruffling feathers. Sitting alone in a quiet corner of the green room, he replayed the argument in his head, wondering if there was anything he could have said differently. Unbeknownst to either man, a young engineer named Emily Dawson was listening closely to everything happening around her. Tasked with maintaining the station's communication systems, she had overheard snippets of private conversations between Clint and his advisors earlier that day. Something about their discussion had struck her as odd, but she hadn't thought much of it until now. With the station buzzing about the argument, Emily decided to dig deeper. What she would uncover would change everything, for Clint, for Robert, and for humanity itself. For now, though, the focus remained on the immediate aftermath of the clash. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and the galaxy watched with bated breath to see what would happen next. The aftermath of Emily and Jake's bold move rippled through Orbital Haven like a shockwave. The station, once a hub of diplomacy and entertainment, now felt like a powder keg ready to explode. News of Clint Eastwood's secret arms deal spread, not only among the humans aboard but also reached the Zorathians. Their reaction was immediate and unsettling. The translucent aliens gathered in their quarters, their glowing skin dimming as if reflecting their collective mood. Whispers filled the air, though none of the humans could understand the strange melodic tones of their language. For the Zorathians, trust was sacred. They had come to Orbital Haven hoping to forge a partnership with humanity, believing that mutual respect and transparency would pave the way for peace. But Clint's actions shattered that belief. One of their representatives, a tall figure, named Vela, approached Rachel Monroe later that evening. Her voice, translated through a device clipped to her chest, was calm but firm. "We cannot negotiate with those who deceive," she said. "This betrayal changes everything." Rachel nodded solemnly, aware of the gravity of the situation. She tried to reassure Vela that not all humans were like Clint, but the damage was done. The Zorathians announced they would withdraw from negotiations and return to their home world. Without them, humanity's hopes for a stable alliance crumbled. The station fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the murmurs of worried crew members and guests. Clint, meanwhile, remained secluded in his quarters. He knew the game was up. His advisors urged him to issue a public statement, to explain his reasoning and perhaps salvage some measure of credibility. But Clint refused. Sitting alone in the dim light of his room, he stared out the window at Earth, a distant blue marble floating in the void. He had always believed he was doing what was best for humanity, even if it meant making difficult choices. Now, faced with the consequences of his actions, he wondered if he had been wrong. For the first time in years, doubt crept into his mind. Robert De Niro, on the other hand, found himself thrust into the spotlight once again. People flocked to him, seeking answers, guidance, or simply someone to blame. Some praised him for exposing Clint's hypocrisy, while others accused him of undermining humanity's chance at survival. Robert didn't know how to feel. Part of him was relieved that the truth had come out, but another part feared the fallout. What if the Zorathians decided humanity wasn't worth the risk? What if this incident led to hostility instead of peace? He spent hours pacing his quarters, replaying the events in his head. He thought about Clint's words during their argument, that ideals couldn't save humanity. Was Clint right? Had Robert's insistence on morality blinded him to the realities of survival? These questions gnawed at him, keeping him awake long into the night. Amid the turmoil, Emily Dawson and Jake Carter became unlikely heroes. Word of their role in uncovering Clint's secret spread quickly, earning them both admiration and suspicion. Some hailed them as brave whistleblowers who had exposed corruption. Others viewed them as reckless troublemakers who had jeopardized humanity's future. Regardless of public opinion, Emily and Jake knew they couldn't stop now. They had started something and they needed to see it through. Emily suggested reaching out to Robert. "He's the one fighting for justice," she told Jake. "Maybe he can help us figure out what to do next." Jake hesitated, still wary of getting too involved, but after seeing the chaos unfold, he reluctantly agreed. Together they arranged a meeting with Robert in a quiet corner of the station's observation deck. When they arrived, Robert was already there, staring out at the stars. He turned as they approached, his expression guarded. "You're the ones who leaked the files?" he asked. Emily nodded, holding out the portable drive containing the evidence. "We didn't mean to cause so much trouble," she admitted. "We just wanted the truth to come out." Robert took the drive, his fingers brushing against it lightly. He studied Emily and Jake for a moment, searching their faces for any sign of deception. Finally, he sighed. "You did the right thing," he said. "But now we have to deal with the consequences." Over the next hour, they discussed their options. Robert knew that exposing Clint's deal wasn't enough. They needed to rebuild trust with the Zorathians. He proposed organizing a public forum where humans and aliens could speak openly about their fears and hopes. "If we can show them that not all of us think like Clint, maybe we can salvage something from this mess," he explained. Emily and Jake agreed to help, using their access to the station's systems to set up the event. Meanwhile, Robert reached out to Rachel Monroe, asking her to moderate the forum. At first, Rachel was hesitant. The station was already on edge, and hosting such a volatile discussion could make things worse. But Robert convinced her that it was worth the risk. "Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith," he said. "Isn't that why you became a journalist?" With Rachel on board, preparations began in earnest. Flyers were distributed throughout the station, inviting everyone, humans and Zorathians alike, to participate. The response was overwhelming. Dozens of people signed up to speak, eager to share their thoughts and concerns. Even Vela, the Zorathian representative, agreed to attend, though she made no promises about changing her stance. On the day of the forum, the observation deck was packed. Humans and aliens sat side by side, their differences stark yet strangely harmonious. Rachel stood at the front, microphone in hand, as she welcomed everyone. "This is a chance for us to listen and learn," she said. "Let's not waste it." One by one, speakers took the stage. A young human woman talked about growing up in a colony oppressed by corporate greed. A Zorathian elder shared stories of his people's struggles to preserve their culture in the face of galactic expansion. Each story added depth to the conversation, painting a picture of shared pain and resilience. When it was Robert's turn to speak, he stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "I've spent my life fighting for justice," he began, "and I'll admit sometimes I've let my emotions get the better of me. But isn't that what makes us human? Our ability to care, to hope, to dream of a better future. If we lose that, then what are we fighting for?" His words resonated with many in the audience, drawing applause from both humans and Zorathians. Even Vela seemed moved, her glowing form brightening slightly. When the floor opened for questions, a Zorathian youth asked Robert how he planned to ensure humanity wouldn't repeat its mistakes. Robert paused, considering the question carefully. By holding ourselves accountable, he answered. By listening to voices like yours and working together to build a world where everyone has a say. As the forum drew to a close, there was a sense of cautious optimism in the air. While the Zorathians hadn't committed to resuming negotiations, they agreed to consider reopening talks in the future. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. Behind the scenes, however, tensions continued to simmer. Clint remained isolated, refusing to engage with anyone. His supporters rallied around him, insisting that his intentions had been misunderstood. Others, emboldened by the forum, called for greater transparency in diplomatic dealings. The division within humanity deepened, threatening to overshadow any progress made with the Zorathians. Emily and Jake watched it all unfold, unsure of what to do next. They had uncovered the truth and sparked a movement, but the road ahead was uncertain. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Emily asked Jake one evening as they sat in the engineering bay. Jake shrugged, his gaze fixed on the floor. "I don't know," he admitted. "But at least we tried. That's more than most people can say." Outside, the stars twinkled in the endless expanse of space, indifferent to the drama unfolding aboard Orbital Haven. For better or worse, the station had become a microcosm of humanity's struggles, a place where ideals clashed with pragmatism, where hope battled cynicism, and where the future hung precariously in the balance. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: the galaxy would never forget the events that transpired here. The days that followed were tense and uncertain. Orbital Haven, once a symbol of humanity's potential to bridge gaps between species, now felt like a pressure cooker on the verge of exploding. The revelation about the weapons hidden in the storage bay had sent shockwaves through both human and Zorathian communities. Vela, the Zorathian representative, returned to her delegation with the evidence Emily, Jake, and Robert had provided. Her people debated long into the night, their glowing forms dimming and brightening as emotions flared. For the humans aboard the station, divisions deepened. Clint Eastwood's supporters accused Robert and his allies of sabotaging peace talks for personal gain. "You think exposing secrets makes you heroes?" one man shouted during a heated argument in the cafeteria. "All you've done is make things worse." Robert remained calm, though his patience was wearing thin. He knew he couldn't convince everyone, but he refused to back down. "If we want trust, we have to be honest," he said firmly, "even when it hurts." Meanwhile, Clint began making moves behind the scenes. Realizing his position was precarious, he reached out to influential figures among the station's leadership, urging them to discredit Robert and his allies. "They're reckless," he told anyone who would listen. "They don't understand the stakes. If we lose control now, we'll lose everything." His words resonated with some, particularly those who believed survival required tough choices. But not everyone was swayed. Many crew members and guests admired Emily and Jake for their bravery. Even skeptics had to admit that uncovering the truth took courage. Rachel Monroe, the journalist who had hosted The Galactic View, decided to investigate further. She interviewed Emily and Jake, giving them a platform to explain their actions. Their story resonated with viewers across the galaxy, turning them into reluctant symbols of resistance against corruption. As tensions mounted, the Zorathians finally made their decision. Vela approached Rachel with a request: a final meeting between human and Zorathian representatives. "This will determine whether we continue negotiations or withdraw entirely," she explained. The meeting was scheduled for the next day, and everyone aboard the station knew its outcome would shape the future of interstellar relations. On the morning of the meeting, the observation deck was packed. Humans and Zorathians sat side by side, their faces reflecting a mix of hope and apprehension. At the center of the room stood Clint and Robert, two men whose conflicting ideologies had come to define the crisis. Vela addressed the gathering first, her voice calm but firm. "We came here seeking partnership," she began, "but what we have found is deception and division. Before we decide our next steps, we wish to hear from both sides." Clint spoke first, his tone measured but unapologetic. I won't deny that mistakes were made, he admitted. But let me be clear. My priority has always been humanity's survival. The weapons were meant to protect us, not to harm. In a dangerous universe, we must be prepared. When it was Robert's turn, he stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. Survival without values isn't worth it, he said. Yes, we face challenges. Yes, there are threats. But if we let fear dictate our actions, we lose sight of who we are. Trust cannot be built on lies. It starts with honesty and accountability. His words struck a chord with many in the audience. Even some of Clint's supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats. When Vela spoke again, her expression gave nothing away. Your differences are great, she said, but so is your potential. We will take this matter back to our council and consider all perspectives. Until then, we ask for patience and unity. The meeting ended on an ambiguous note, leaving everyone uneasy. Over the following days, the Zorathians retreated to their quarters, deliberating in private. On the human side, debates continued to rage. Some called for reconciliation, while others urged retaliation if the Zorathians rejected their overtures. Through it all, Emily and Jake worked tirelessly to keep morale high, organizing small gatherings where people could share their thoughts and fears. Finally, the Zorathians announced their decision. They would not resume formal negotiations, but they also wouldn't sever ties completely. Instead, they proposed a trial period during which humans and Zorathians would collaborate on specific projects aimed at fostering mutual understanding. Let these efforts prove your sincerity, Vela said. Then, and only then, will we reconsider. The announcement was met with mixed reactions. For some, it was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild trust. For others, it was a frustrating compromise that didn't go far enough. Regardless, it marked a turning point. Slowly but surely, life aboard Orbital Haven began returning to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could get after such upheaval. Clint disappeared shortly after the announcement, retreating to a remote outpost on the edge of explored space. Rumors circulated that he planned to continue his work in secret, though few believed he would ever regain his former influence. Robert, meanwhile, threw himself into the new collaboration projects, determined to prove that humanity could rise above its flaws. He became a mentor to younger crew members, teaching them the importance of empathy and integrity. Emily and Jake earned recognition for their role in exposing the truth. Though they never sought fame, they embraced their newfound status as advocates for transparency. Together, they founded a watchdog group dedicated to monitoring diplomatic activities and holding leaders accountable. Their efforts inspired others to speak up, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond Orbital Haven. As weeks turned into months, the station transformed. What had once been a place of tension and mistrust became a hub of cooperation and innovation. Humans and Zorathians worked side by side on initiatives ranging from environmental conservation to cultural exchange programs. Mistakes were still made and disagreements arose, but there was a shared commitment to learning and growing together. Late one evening, Emily stood alone in the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Jake joined her moments later, handing her a cup of coffee. "Do you think we did the right thing?" he asked quietly. Emily smiled, her eyes reflecting the distant glow of Earth. "I think we did what we had to do," she replied. "It wasn't perfect and it wasn't easy, but sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks even when you don't know how it'll turn out." Jake nodded, sipping his drink. "Well, whatever happens next, I'm glad we're in it together." Outside, the galaxy stretched endlessly, vast and unpredictable. Humanity's journey was far from over, filled with challenges yet unseen. But, aboard Orbital Haven, something remarkable had taken root. A fragile but enduring hope that, despite their differences, humans and aliens could find common ground. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to change the course of history. The tension from the heated argument between Clint Eastwood and Robert De Niro lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. Orbital Haven buzzed with activity as news of the confrontation spread like wildfire. Viewers across the galaxy couldn't get enough of it, dissecting every word, every gesture, and every moment of the clash. Social media platforms lit up with memes, hot takes, and endless debates. Some sided with Clint, praising his no-nonsense approach to survival. Others rallied behind Robert, hailing him as a champion of morality and justice. The divide grew wider, with each passing hour. On the station itself, the fallout was immediate and unavoidable. Rachel Monroe, the host of The Galactic View, tried her best to keep things professional. She called an emergency meeting with her producers to discuss how they could salvage the situation. "We can't just let this blow over," she said, pacing back and forth in the control room. "This is too big. We need to give both sides a chance to explain themselves." Her team agreed, and plans were quickly made to arrange separate interviews with Clint and Robert. The goal was clear: dig deeper into their perspectives and give the audience more content to chew on. Clint's interview came first. He sat in the same chair he had stormed out of earlier, his expression unreadable. Rachel began by asking him why he had walked off the set. "I didn't come here to waste my time arguing about ideals," Clint replied, his voice calm but firm. "We're dealing with a species that could wipe us out if we make one wrong move. Survival isn't about feelings, it's about making the right decisions. And sometimes those decisions aren't pretty." His words resonated with many viewers, who admired his pragmatism. But when Rachel pressed him on whether he thought Robert's points had any merit, Clint hesitated. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "Look," he said finally, "I respect passion. I do. But passion alone won't save us. If we want to live, we need to be smart. That's all I'm saying." Robert's interview followed later that day. Unlike Clint, Robert leaned forward in his chair, his hands gesturing emphatically as he spoke. What Clint doesn't understand, or maybe he does and just doesn't care, is that compromise without principles is dangerous, he said. If we start treating the Zorathians like enemies instead of potential allies, we're setting ourselves up for failure. Trust has to go both ways. Rachel nodded thoughtfully, then asked him about Clint's claim that emotions had no place in diplomacy. Robert laughed bitterly. "Emotions are what make us human. If we lose sight of that, then what's the point? Are we just machines trying to survive at any cost? No, we have to fight for what's right, even if it's hard." As the interviews aired, the public reaction was mixed. Some viewers praised Clint for his realism, while others applauded Robert for standing up for humanity's values. But the debate wasn't limited to social media or living rooms. On the station itself, tensions ran high among the crew and guests. Conversations in hallways and cafeterias often turned into heated arguments, mirroring the larger conflict playing out across the galaxy. Amid the chaos, Emily Dawson found herself drawn deeper into the mystery she had stumbled upon earlier. As an engineer responsible for maintaining the station's communication systems, Emily had access to areas most people didn't. Her curiosity had been piqued when she overheard fragments of conversations between Clint and his advisors. At first, she dismissed it as typical diplomatic chatter, until she noticed something strange. Certain files in the system were encrypted beyond standard protocol, and restricted zones of the station seemed unusually busy. Emily decided to investigate further. Late at night, when most of the station was asleep, she slipped into a maintenance tunnel that led to one of the restricted areas. Her heart raced as she navigated the dimly lit passageways, her footsteps echoing softly against the metal walls. When she reached her destination, she used her credentials to bypass security locks. A risky move, but one she felt compelled to take. Inside, she discovered classified documents detailing secret negotiations between Clint and the Zorathians. What she read shocked her. It wasn't just about peace talks. Hidden within the files was evidence of a covert arms deal. According to the documents, Clint was brokering a trade involving advanced weaponry designed to protect human settlements. While the technology was supposedly defensive, Emily knew it could easily be repurposed for aggression. The implications were staggering. If word got out, it could destroy any chance of peaceful relations with the Zorathians, and possibly ignite a war. Terrified but determined, Emily downloaded copies of the files onto a portable drive. She needed help, but she couldn't trust just anyone. After much deliberation, she approached Jake Carter, a quiet mechanic who worked in the station's engineering bay. Jake had always kept to himself, rarely engaging in politics or gossip. But Emily remembered hearing him grumble once about how Clint's policies had ruined his family's business back on Earth. Maybe, she thought, he would understand. Jake listened intently as Emily explained what she had found. His initial reaction was disbelief, followed by anger. "Are you serious?" he whispered, glancing around nervously. "If this gets out, it'll be chaos." Despite his hesitation, Jake agreed to help. Together, they devised a plan to expose the truth without getting caught. Meanwhile, Clint grew increasingly suspicious of leaks. He had heard rumors of unauthorized access to sensitive areas and immediately tightened security protocols. Extra guards patrolled the corridors and surveillance cameras monitored every movement. Emily and Jake knew they were running out of time. One wrong step, and they'd be arrested, or worse. Their fears were realized sooner than expected. Late, one evening, as Emily sneaked back into the restricted area to retrieve additional data, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed and automated voices instructed everyone to remain calm. Emily froze, her mind racing. She had triggered a security alert. Panicked, she grabbed the drive and bolted down the nearest maintenance tunnel. Behind her, heavy footsteps echoed as guards gave chase. Emily's heart pounded as she darted through narrow passages, her breath coming in short gasps. Just when she thought she was cornered, Jake appeared from a side corridor. "This way," he hissed, pulling her toward an emergency hatch. They scrambled through it, emerging in a storage bay filled with crates and equipment. Hiding behind a stack of supplies, they waited silently as the guards searched nearby. When the coast was clear, Emily and Jake slipped away, retreating to a secluded part of the station where they could regroup. Exhausted but relieved, they reviewed the files together. There was no denying the gravity of what they had uncovered. If the Zorathians learned about the arms deal, it would shatter any trust they had in humanity. But keeping silent meant letting Clint manipulate the negotiations for his own agenda. As they debated their next move, news of another crisis hit the station. A malfunction in the life support systems caused oxygen levels to drop dangerously low, sending everyone scrambling for safety. Emergency pods were prepped for evacuation and panic spread like wildfire. In the chaos, Emily saw an opportunity. With everyone distracted, she and Jake managed to broadcast the stolen files to the entire station. The truth about Clint's secret dealings was revealed, not only to the humans aboard Orbital Haven but also to the Zorathian delegation. The revelation sent shockwaves through the station. People gathered in common areas, watching screens displaying the damning evidence. Whispers turned into shouts as accusations flew. Clint's supporters defended him, claiming the weapons were necessary for protection, while others condemned him for betraying the principles of peace. Robert, hearing the news, felt a mix of vindication and dread. He had suspected Clint of hiding something, but he hadn't imagined it would be this bad. For Clint, the exposure was devastating. Cornered and unable to deny the allegations, he retreated to a private quarters, refusing to comment. Outside, the Zorathians prepared to withdraw from negotiations entirely. Their glowing forms moved gracefully but with unmistakable tension as they conferred among themselves. Humanity's chance at peaceful coexistence hung precariously in the balance. In the midst of it all, Emily and Jake watched quietly from the shadows. They had done what they believed was right, but the consequences weighed heavily on them. The future was uncertain now, shaped by secrets, lies, and the courage of two ordinary individuals who dared to challenge power. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The days following the forum on Orbital Haven were a mix of hope and tension. The Zorathians had not outright rejected humanity, but they also hadn't committed to continuing negotiations. Their representatives remained aboard the station, observing quietly as humans grappled with their internal divisions. Meanwhile, the atmosphere among the human crew and guests was charged, with debates spilling into hallways, dining areas, and even private quarters. Everyone had an opinion, and no one was shy about sharing it. Clint Eastwood stayed out of sight, holed up in his quarters like a wounded animal. He refused to speak publicly or defend his actions, though rumors swirled about secret meetings with his advisors. Some whispered that he was planning a counterattack, perhaps a smear campaign against Emily and Jake, or even Robert. Others believed he was simply waiting for the storm to pass, knowing that public outrage would eventually fade. Whatever his plan, Clint's silence only fueled speculation and distrust. Robert De Niro, on the other hand, became more visible than ever. Inspired by the success of the forum, he threw himself into organizing smaller discussions across the station. These gatherings were less formal but no less important, focusing on specific issues such as labor rights, resource allocation, and cultural exchange between species. Robert's energy was infectious, drawing people in and giving them a sense of purpose. For many, he represented a beacon of hope, a reminder that change was possible if enough people worked together, but not everyone shared his optimism. Critics argued that Robert's efforts were too idealistic, pointing out that diplomacy required compromise, not just moralizing. "You can't negotiate with aliens using flowery speeches," one man snapped during a heated discussion in the OFO cafeteria. "They don't care about your dreams of peace, they care about power." Robert listened patiently, then responded with quiet determination. "Maybe they don't care now," he said. "But if we stop trying to show them who we really are, we'll never give them a reason to." Despite the backlash, Robert's message resonated with many, especially younger members of the crew. Among them was Emily Dawson, who found herself drawn to his conviction. She admired how he refused to back down even when faced with overwhelming odds. At the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more work to be done. Exposing Clint's arms deal had been a start, but it wasn't enough. If humanity wanted to prove itself trustworthy, they needed to address the root causes of their problems, not just the symptoms. Emily confided in Jake Carter, who had become her closest ally since their discovery of the classified files. "We need to keep pushing," she told him one evening as they tinkered with equipment in the engineering bay. "If we stop now, everything we've done will be for nothing." Jake nodded, though his expression was troubled. "I get what you're saying," he replied. "But where do we even begin? We're just engineers, Emily, not politicians or diplomats." Emily smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why people listen to us. We're not trying to gain anything, we just want to fix things." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alert on Emily's tablet. It was a message from an anonymous source, containing coordinates and a brief note. "Restricted area. Something big is happening here. Be careful." Emily frowned, glancing at Jake. "Do you think this is real?" she asked. Jake shrugged. "Could be a trap. Or it could be another lead. Either way, we won't know unless we check it out." After some deliberation, they decided to investigate. Late that night, they slipped away from their usual duties and made their way to the designated location, a storage bay tucked deep within the station's lower levels. The area was dark and eerily quiet, with only the hum of machinery breaking the silence. Using her access codes, Emily unlocked the door and stepped inside, Jake close behind her. What they found left them speechless. Stacked neatly in rows were crates marked with symbols neither of them recognized. Curious, Emily opened one and gasped. Inside were weapons, advanced, sleek, and unmistakably designed for combat. There were hundreds of them, far more than the documents they had uncovered earlier had suggested. Emily's heart sank as realization dawned on her. "This isn't just about protecting colonies," she whispered. "This is preparation for war." Jake clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Clint must have known this would happen," he muttered. "He set us up for failure." Before they could process the implications, footsteps echoed. Outside the bay, someone was coming. Panicked, Emily and Jake quickly closed the crate and hid behind a stack of supplies. Moments later, the door slid open, revealing two figures clad in black uniforms. They moved silently, inspecting the crates before exchanging a few hushed words and leaving as abruptly as they had arrived. Once the coast was clear, Emily and Jake slipped out of the storage bay and hurried back to their quarters. Their minds raced with questions. Who were those men? Were they working for Clint? Or was someone else pulling the strings? And most importantly, what were they going to do with the information? The next morning they approached Robert, knowing they needed guidance. "We have proof that Clint's deal goes beyond self-defense," Emily explained, showing him images of the weapons. "If we expose this, it could destroy any chance of trust between humans and the Zorathians." Robert studied the photos carefully, his expression grim. "This changes everything," he said finally, "but we can't act rashly. If we release this without thinking it through, we risk making things worse." Together, they devised a plan. Instead of broadcasting the evidence, immediately, they would present it privately to Vela, the Zorathian representative. If she understood the full scope of the deception, perhaps she could help mediate a solution. It was a risky move, betraying human secrets to an alien species, but they saw no other option. That evening, under the guise of routine maintenance, Emily and Jake arranged a meeting with Vela in one of the station's observation decks. The Zorathian elder listened intently as Robert explained the situation, her glowing form flickering slightly with each revelation. When they finished, she was silent for a long moment. "You have shown great courage," she said finally. "But I must warn you, this news will not sit well with my people. Many already doubt your intentions." "We understand," Robert replied. "But hiding the truth will only make things worse. We want to build trust, not destroy it." Vela nodded slowly. "Very well. I will take this information to my council. But know this. The path forward will be difficult. You must prepare yourselves for whatever comes next." As they parted ways, Emily, Jake, and Robert felt a mix of relief and dread. They had taken another step toward transparency, but the consequences were unpredictable. Back in their quarters, they braced themselves for the fallout, knowing that the station, and perhaps the entire galaxy, was on the brink of transformation. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood grew increasingly agitated. His advisors informed him of the recent developments, warning that his position was growing weaker by the hour. "We need to act fast," one of them urged. "If we don't regain control of the narrative, we'll lose everything." Clint nodded, his jaw tightening. For the first time in years, he felt cornered. But he wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. With renewed determination, he began plotting his next move, determined to protect humanity, even if it meant rewriting the rules of engagement. Unbeknownst to everyone, however, the Zorathians were preparing their own response. What had started as a diplomatic mission was rapidly evolving into something far greater, a test of whether two vastly different species could truly coexist in a universe rife with uncertainty. As tensions mounted and alliances shifted, Orbital, Haven stood as a fragile bridge between worlds, teetering on the edge of collapse.